What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. So today we got to do something that I've been putting off for quite some time, mainly because I have a feeling it's going to turn into a lot more work than it should. This is what we're doing. We got lower control arm bolts and the torsion bar bolts. So all these bolts on the truck right now are completely seized. I have tried to loosen the torsion bars. They are cranked. They're completely maxed out. The upper control arm is literally sitting on the bump stop. So I tried to lower it. Those are seized. The alignment's been really screwed up, and I tried to adjust these lower control arm bolts. They are not budging. So we got to do something today. Hopefully we don't have to strip the entire lower control arms off and completely replace the bushings. Hopefully we can get the bolts out and save the bushings because I didn't buy any. I'm hoping that we can save those. So you can see I've already started kind of preparing. So I took all the nuts off. The nuts came off just fine, but the bolts seize into the bushing because the inside of the bushing has a steel sleeve, and they literally rust together and they don't move. So I took the nuts off. I've been soaking this with it's called Freol. It's just a penetrating lubricant, kind of like WD-40. So they've been soaking for a couple days. We're gonna try to beat these things out of there. Hopefully we can get these out without cutting them and replacing these bushings. So what I'm gonna start with is I'm gonna jack the truck up, get the frame on some jack stands to completely take all the pressure. Well, I'm gonna attempt to take all the pressure off. I think these torsion bars are so cranked up that even with it at full droop, there's still some pressure. So that's kind of what I've been worried about as well. If I have to cut those bolts off, they're gonna go flying if they're loaded up from just being so maxed out. What I actually did so far is I pulled the bump stops off of the upper control arm. That's what was holding the control arm from drooping more. So I took those bump stops off, so I should have a little bit more down travel to hopefully take a little bit more stress off of those torsion bars. All right, we got it jacked up, pulled the wheels and tires off. I also loosened up the shock because they were holding it from dropping anymore, and you can see upper control arm is hitting the actual mount on the frame. So that's about as far as we can get it. So I think I'm gonna start with the torsion bar bolts, see if we can get those off. And if they don't come, we're gonna have to cut them, and hopefully these things don't just go flying. Check that out, guys. I guess the Freol worked. Like I said, I've been soaking these for a few days. I tried this a couple months ago. They didn't move at all. The only issue is this little half moon washer thing is completely rusted on, so we're gonna have to get that off. That's why it was kind of snapping back. You can see it was kind of rounded the edges, but still should work just fine because I didn't buy new ones. I just got the bolt and the nut. So we're gonna have to beat this off of there, and then we can throw the new bolt in. All right, I got a couple words for you. Anti-seize. So we're gonna anti-seize the entire bolt make sure we get them in this washer so that doesn't happen again. And I guess we don't really need to do the nut. And you definitely don't want to do right here where the nut sits inside the actual arm, because the arm kind of holds the nut so you don't have to put a wrench on the top. So we'll just anti-seize the whole bolt. We'll get this washer back on it, and then we can throw the bolt back on the truck. Well guys, must be my lucky day. We got both bolts out without cutting them. So that's kind of rare for these trucks. Usually, in my experience, I've had to cut those bolts out. So now let's get on these lower control arm bolts and hopefully we have the same luck. Well, I've been beating on these bolts for about an hour now, and I cannot get them to move. So I'm gonna order up bushings, and I'm gonna cut these things out. I'm sure these bushings probably aren't in the best shape anyway, so we might as well go all the way through and just redo the bushings, new bolts, everything. So let's get cutting these things out. This is gonna be a little bit of a trick. So what I think I'm gonna do is cut the threads off on the outside, and then it's hard to get a cutoff wheel, you know, in between the arm and the frame there, but we'll figure something out. Sawzall, cutoff wheel, something to get in there and cut these bolts out. Well, we finally got one arm off, and this bushing for the front kind of just fell out, so I guess we gotta press the rear bushing out. But first, let's get on the other side, get the other arm off. So what I'm using is, I guess that one's worn. So I used one blade per bolt, and it actually cut pretty quick, and you just gotta buy good blades. So I'm using the Milwaukee blade 14 TPI, and cut surprisingly fast. I actually made 3 cuts. I made a cut on either side, on the inside of the front bushing, and then I was able to leave that stub sticking out on the back and just kind of pivot the whole arm out. So let's get the other side cut out, and then we'll press these bushings out. I'm really hoping that the diameter of this bushing, I guess you can see it isn't quite straight, so hopefully the arm isn't worn out so the new bushing fits nice and snug in there. Well, that wasn't so bad. Got all the bushings out. They sure make an explosion when they finally pop free. The only problem I was having is you have to push the bushings out to the outside, and obviously I couldn't set the A-arm up because the ram is in the way, so I had to take a bigger socket and go over the outside here, and then that smaller socket was pushing on the bushing here, and it worked pretty good. We got all the bushings out. So I got the bushings. I bought a set of shocks and sway bar end links because these are all rusted. So all that's ordered, just waiting for that to show up, and then we can put this thing back together. All right guys, after a few days of delayed shipping and about a week later, finally got our order in. So we should have lower control arm bushings, a full set all the way around for shocks, and then the sway bar end links. So let's open it up, make sure we got it. Well, it looks like everything is here, so I picked up a set of these Moog lower control arm bushings. Moog is a pretty good brand. OEM replacements. They're not poly or anything, but just OEM replacements. And then the AC Delco sway bar end link. And then I also picked up a set of KYB shocks. These are pretty high quality shocks. KYBs have been around for a very long time. Very high quality shock. These are actually made for about a 2-inch lift. This says 0 to 2. They're just a little bit longer than the factory shock, so I kind of wanted that just because I do have a little bit of lift. So we'll open these up when we get that far, but for now we got to get the bushings pressed back into the A-arm. So let's get to work with that. There we go, guys. Bushings went in, no problem. So now we're going to grease up the inside of these bushings where the bolts ride, and then we'll grease up the bolts as well. We'll get these installed on the truck, get everything bolted in, and then we can start throwing everything else back together. Alright guys, we're making some progress. So we got control arms bolted in, sway bar is hooked up. So now let's go open the shocks. We'll get the front shocks mounted up, and then we can set it on the ground and kind of halfway get the alignment close. And then I'll have to obviously bring it into a shop for a full correct alignment. But either way, we can get it close. So here's the shocks. Like I said, these are the KYB, and they're just a little bit longer than a factory shock. So if you got, up to like 2 inches of lift, these shocks will work great for you. Well, there we go. She's sitting on her own weight again. You can see the alignment is definitely messed up. So like I said, we're going to get it somewhat close so we can actually drive it to the alignment shop. We also have to set the height of the torsion bar bolt. Since we replaced those, we got to get the height where we want it and then make sure it's even side to side. And that is all done by just tightening or loosening that big bolt that we installed. Alright guys, we got this side pretty much close enough. If you remember before, it was way cambered in, so now that we actually can adjust the camber and everything with our new bolts, we can get it set. So I'm gonna call that good. Obviously this is just eyeball, so I can drive it to the alignment shop. You can see this side, I haven't even touched this side and it's maybe towed in a little bit, but pretty close. So I think I'm gonna leave it there. All right, we got everything tightened down on the front end. So now let's adjust these torsion bar bolts. So we're gonna measure from the lip of the rim up to the fender, and we're gonna compare both sides. And if it's not even, we're gonna adjust the torsion bar bolts, get it evened out. And that's about the right height already. So I'm gonna leave it at that height. We're just gonna adjust side to side to get the truck sitting level. So the passenger side is about a 1/2 inch higher. So I think I'm gonna lower the passenger side about a 1/4 inch and then raise the driver's side about a 1/4 inch. Get it evened out. And before you adjust the torsion bar bolts, you need to jack the front end of the truck up. Get the pressure off of the torsion bars. That way you can adjust those bolts. All right, we got those bars adjusted. The whole front end sitting nice and level. So the next thing we got to do is throw our new rear shocks on. So let's get them opened up and we can bolt them on. There we go, guys. We're all finished up with the truck. So one of these days we'll have to bring it in, get it aligned, and get all that situated, and we should be good to go. So like always, I'll have all these parts I used linked down in the description if you want to check it out. I know this is a very common problem on these older trucks. The lower control arm bolts are always seized up. So if you're gonna do a lift kit or even just try to align it, you may run into the same issues with having to cut them out and replace the bushings. So everything will be linked down in the description if you want to check that out. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope it helps you out if you're in this type of situation, got one of these older trucks and having some issues. So go smash that thumbs up button, comment, subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one.